Page 148. This is Unit 11, or the first part of Unit 11. I'm not going to do the whole unit in one lesson. But this unit, apparently we're covering the dominant and the dominant seventh chords. And that sounds impressive. Ooh, dominant. Okay. And they got a list of junk up there where stuff you're supposed to learn in this lesson. Ugh. Let's go on and talk about chords for a bit. You've already had the tonic chord. I hope you remember tonic, because if you can't remember the tonic chord, I don't have a lot of hope in you remembering the dominant chord. The tonic chord is the one chord. It's built on step 1 of the scale. Go to C major, our white key, our friendly white keys here, because it's easy to see the pattern of the scale in C major. You can see the whole steps. There's a black key in there. Okay. Step 1 of the scale, it makes it a one chord. You build a chord on that. It's also known as a tonic because step 1 of a scale is also known as the tonic. The dominant is the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the dominant chord in C major. If I were in G major, that would be the tonic chord. But in C major, it's the dominant. That's as complicated as we need to get right there on dominant chords. It's a 5 chord. You see the Roman numerals underneath, it'd be a V. Okay. Now, if I add another note to it, make it 4 notes. So I have a 5 chord, and then I add a 4th or another note to it here. The distance between this note and this note is a 7th. So we call this a dominant 7 or a 5/7. Would be a V with a little 7 after it. They got examples there. It's a superscript 7. Okay. Now we can invert this. We turn it over. I'm going down here. There. We can invert this. I put the G on top. I can put the B on top. I can put the D on top. Whatever. I don't care. That's inverting. First, second, third inversions. And root position. This is always root position. Remember root position. Every other note in the bottom note identifies the chord. Okay. Of course, in a 7th chord, you need help. The root doesn't do it all. You got to have the 7th added on. We don't always use all the notes. We need the top and bottom. But either of the other two is fine. And generally, we will use the B. Because we go from a C chord to a 5/7 chord or a G7 chord. And that way it's close by. Some music will use the D. Either one. It depends on what the music, and if you're writing music, you try them out which you like better. I go by what sounds good. Well, to a point. Now, let's talk about these little numbers. Remember? Because we had the first inversion was a 1/6. That means the distance between the top and bottom note was an interval of a 1/6. It could be a 3/6, but a 6. And then a 1/6/4, 6 and a 4. You're just telling you the distance between the notes. Okay, well, we do the same with the dominant 7th, except here we got 4 notes. And they give you examples. Go back to a G chord. Here, now if I turn it over, this would be a 5/6, because the distance between, it could be a 5/3/6 or 6/3, I guess is what you see. 5/6, but we usually leave out the 3. We just say a 5/6, which is first inversion of a 5 chord. 5 chord, turn it over once. That's first inversion, so that is a 5 with a little 6 after it. Roman numeral 5, little 6, subscript 6. If I did it again, it would be the 6/4, the 5 with a little 6/4 after it. All right. Add the 7th. What does that do? Well, you're just doing the intervals here. I got these. I'm going to leave out this note. I want a triad, so I'm going to do these. Now I turn it over, and they show you in the middle of page 149 here. This, well, the interval between this is a 5, and the interval between this is a 6. So this is a 5/6/5. You don't really need the 5/7/6/5, the 5/7, because the 6/5 tells you it's got to be a seventh here, because this is an interval of a fifth, and that's an interval of a sixth. So it's a 5, 6, 5. A lot of numbers here. I'm getting confused, but that's sort of how they do it. I've never really used them in music, but it's nice to know the theory, I guess. If you happen to be reading something that has them in them, at least you have some idea of what they're talking about. Yeah. So you see it at the bottom of the page. This is a very common chord progression. A chord progression is a series of chords. Okay, and a 1, 1, 5, 7, and this 6, 5 arrangement. And this, by the way, is first inversion. Another way of saying it, first inversion. But here, it just flows. Harmonically, it just flows, and we get this a lot. I recommend you try and do this in all the keys you've had, whatever they are. Just do the 1, the 5, 7. The pattern is simple. If you look at the keys, the bottom note goes down a half step, and you're using the top 2 keys in the hand position. And you can do that in any key. So here, I go to G, same thing. I go down a half step, and I use the top coat. Let's go here. I go down a half step, use the top 2 here. They'll work the same way. Yeah. Now at the top of page 150, they have them written out. Some of them written out. You have the C, F, G, C, blah, blah, blah. Okay, have fun with those. Again, you can do it with any key. But when you're accompanying and you have to improvise something, these come in handy. Now in the middle of the page of 150, you're doing basically the same thing, but now the left hand's only playing the root chord. Because in key of C, the 1 chord, and then the 5 chord is the root of the 5th chord. So it's just one, whatever key you're in. It gets a little more involved than this, but let's see if we can soak this in first before we get more involved. Anyway, congratulations if you made it this far in the book and you haven't dropped out yet or said, oh, I can't do this. Stick around there. I'll see if I can scare you off later.